So we're going to talk about templates a little bit more and setting them up now with adding layers. So layers are a way of keeping your files organized and for you to maintain an overview. Okay, so AutoCAD has the option of creating layers and drawing objects on and assigning objects to layers. So layers are basically categories to contain objects of a common type. So as a simple example, it's advisable in a floor plan to keep different categories of objects on different layers. So that could be walls, furnitures, plumbing fixtures, doors, notes, etc. So to be able to display or plot them as required depending on the person you are preparing the drawing for. So the client in general needs to see different information than, for example, the mechanical engineer. And layers allow us to sort that information as opposed to creating multiple drawings with that information. So we'll be getting into more advanced aspects of layers in later classes as we use them more. So in order to create a layer, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this from the drawing template, okay, because this is where the drawing template really shines in a way, in that creating layers, okay, can be a bit of a tedious process. So if we already have them set up in our drawing template, all we have to do is open up our drawing template, create the layers in that, save it, and then open up a drawing from the drawing template, okay, and we can start off running. So you can see here in my recent documents, okay, that I can open my drawing template, or I can go, just by clicking on it, or I can go to my open. Okay, select my drawing template. Make sure that your drawing template is located or is current in the files of type. Okay, and you can see up above that this is my drawing template and that my units are now in architectural units as we did in the last video. So to create layers, we have to access the Layer Properties Manager either by clicking on the Tool button or by typing in the alias LA or by typing in Layer. Okay, and the Tool button is up above. And you'll notice that when we click that, a pop-up window appears. Okay, and so per default, you should see at least the layer 0 and occasionally the layer def points. Now, def points is a default non-plottable layer that's connected to layer 0 by AutoCAD. Layer 0 is a layer on which we were drawing our objects in our previous assignment. Okay, so AutoCAD is always going to come in with layer 0. It's never going to have no layers. It's at the very least, it's going to have layer 0. By clicking on the New Layer button in the pop-up window, a new layer called Layer 1 appears. So we can either add a new layer by clicking on the New Layer button, or as indicated, we can hold down the Alt key and then hit N. So you can rename this option to something more specific, such as a wall. Okay, so note that the letter A in this case stands for architectural as opposed to mechanical or structural. Layer naming is pretty standardized in the profession, and the AIA has gone to great lengths in trying to standardize the profession's layer names. However, you'll find that from firm to firm, it does have the potential to change, okay, even though standardization was tried for, in a good spirit. So before we get into anything, we'll name this A plan, okay, wall, just by entering a new name. And then by looking for columns to the right, you'll find the column color. Okay, and that color you can change just by clicking on the color of the layer with this little box. Okay, and we can change it as we need to. Now, what I suggest is that there is a layer list, okay, that I've included with the assignment. Stay to that. Okay, don't start to get fancy with the layer colors. Okay, and we'll find out why in a later class. So color white, okay, for A-plan wall is fine, okay, and we're going to stick to these, 9 colors down at the bottom for future purposes, okay. So to add a couple more layers, okay, again, if I go to the assignment, there is, A-plan wall, let's say a new layer, okay, A-plan glaze, and that's for glass, and I've indicated not only the color and the line type after, the layer in the list, but also, the category that it's for. So that's going to be green. Okay, let's add a plan level, which is essentially the level like a that's not a stair. Okay, that's going to be blue, and these are typically red, yellow, green, cyan, blue, magenta, white. Okay, then color 8 and color 9. Okay, and then let's add one that has a line type. Okay, so by default in AutoCAD, okay, the default is to make every line a continuous line, so that's AKA a solid line. However, we may need to change our lines to be dashed, etc. So in the Layer Properties menu, okay, in the Manager, next to Color is Line Type, and that's where we can specify our line type. So let's create a plan hidden, okay, and that's abbreviated. That is color 8. Okay, and then if you click on line type for the selected layer, a dialog pops up. So you'll note that AutoCAD has defaulted to its own line types. So if you don't see the line type you wish to assign, so we only see continuous here, AutoCAD has many more that you can load. So in order to find the additional line types, if you click on load, you can select the line types that you wish to assign, and then you click OK. So for hidden, I'm going to go down to hidden, just a regular hidden, and hit OK. And then you'll see that now that line type has been added to the list, and you can choose it for later layers if you need to. Okay, so it's already loaded into AutoCAD. So I can hit OK, and it'll come up with the hidden line type. Note that if I click on the line types, if you've seen details with insulation, okay, bat insulation, that's actually a line type. Okay, it might not make much sense now, but you'll find that later on when you're drawing these details, this is actually a huge time saver. And also note that the layer characteristics are universal for all of the objects that are assigned to that layer. So by changing the settings in the property palette or under the properties ribbon, you can assign different characteristics to an object. So in other words, you can customize an object individually to be different from those of the same layer. But there's a time and a place for that, and it's few and far between. So this comes from experience using the program, especially in conjunction with a project. So in time, you'll recognize when to do that, but refrain from doing that in this class. So it can have severe repercussions that's not immediately obvious to a beginning user. So what that means is just, work with the properties that, we're going to assign the layers. Don't go and customize anything. Okay, that's basically what I mean in short. So in order to continue, okay, so what I'm going to do is you can see that now I've added those layers, okay, to this template file, and I'm going to save this template file. Okay, so that now when I close out of it, I'm going to create a new drawing with my template file. Okay, and you can see that it's a DWG file, okay, not my DWT file. You want to make sure that you're not saving over your template file. And you can see that my layers are in there. So now, with my layers and with my units, I can start off running, okay, when I start to draft and I open up a file. So this is the point of creating these template files, that I don't have to go back and recreate layers all over again, okay? This is a clean way of doing it. So what I want to do is I want to start to draw objects on layers. So if you wish to make a certain layer the default layer, so for example, there's a couple ways of working. You can start off by, if you know that you're making walls, you can wish to make your default layer, the wall, so that everything that you do, everything that you draw is automatically going to go on the wall layer, and you can change them as you change what you're drawing. Or you can just reassign layers, start by creating them all on layers and then reassigning them later on. Just keep in mind that you can only have one layer current at one time. Okay, so to make a layer current, there's a few ways of doing it. Okay, the first way is to open up the Layer Properties Manager, highlight the layer. So if we start with wall, highlight the layer that we wish to make current, and click on the Set Current button. Okay, or you can see when I mouse over it, it says Alt-C. And you can see that when I change that up here, this layer list changes too as well. Okay, these are always going to be connected to each other. They're the same exact thing. Okay, another way that you can do it is in model space. You can expand the layer list. Okay, and you can click on the layer that you wish to make current. So I can click on, let's say, A plan hidden, and then everything that I draw, you know, so if I draw a line, will make my, will actually be the current layer. Okay, and you can see that that's what's indicated here is that this is the current layer. If I change a layer, okay, and I want my hidden layer to be my current layer, okay, I can click on the object with the layer that I wish to make current and click on the Make Objects Layer Current. So that's that Make Current button up above. And you can see that the command for that is lay mcur. And if I click on that, okay, you can see that my A-plan wall is current. If I want to make my hidden layer current, if I just click on the object with that layer, okay, using that command, it'll make that layer current. Okay. The other thing is, so as I mentioned, there's two methodologies for doing this. We can start off, you know, if I know that I'm going to be creating walls, okay, I can start off by using that wall layer as the current layer and then just start drawing. But there might get to be a point where you want to change the layer of an object. So in that way, you can do that again in a few different ways. So you can select the objects. So let's say I am creating some walls. I'm going to offset them 6 inches, which is pretty standard. You can see I'm zoomed in. Oops. Okay. I can trim okay. So let's say these are walls. And I'm going to quickly make another thing that when you start to draw, and I wouldn't suggest doing this arbitrarily, I'm only doing it to be quick, but you can mouse over an object snap and you can extend this line and it'll keep it oriented the same way with that line. Okay, I'm just doing this very quickly. I know this is probably a little fast. Okay, and then what I can do, so this, what I drew here, is a window. Okay, and these are walls here. And so what I want to do is I want to make these objects that are part of the window, and we'll get into this, you know, more as we go. I want to make them on the glazing layer. Okay, so all of my objects, no matter what they are with the window, are put on the are assigned to the glazing layer. So there's a few ways of doing this. The first way is to select the objects, okay, that I want to move to a different layer. And with these objects selected, go to the layer drop-down menu, okay, and select the layer that I want them to be assigned to. Okay, and hit escape to deselect them. So that's one way of doing it. The other way, if I undo that, is using the properties palette, okay, which is Control 1. Okay, I can select my objects and I can change my layer to be glazing. Okay, this is a little bit more difficult because it doesn't really have the visual properties that the layer list does up here. I don't really use this method, but it is a method. Okay, and then there's also the match properties. Okay, and the match properties command, if you do match prop or MA, okay, if this object is glazing on the glazing layer, okay, I can use my match properties. I can click on this layer that I want this to match, and essentially you'll see that there's this little paint brush, okay, that pops up, and I can paint those objects onto that layer. Okay, so that's another very common way of doing it. Note that the color and the properties of the selected objects, okay, changes to reflect their new layer. And that's by making everything, you know, simple and clean as we've been setting it up. And again, you know, as we go through, we'll see these repercussions later on. So an easy tool for you to figure out what's on what layer is this lay walk layer, which might be helpful when you start to draw up your plan. So if I type in lay walk, okay, what this is it's just a dialog showing me the layers that I have in my file, okay, and you'll find that with your homework you'll have a lot more. And then I can actually toggle through my layers in order to see what's on what layer, okay, and this will help you with drawing management. So layer 0, okay, you'll see there's nothing on that, which is good, okay, and we'll talk about layer 0 when we get into it and the specific things that should be on layer 0. There's A-plan glazing, so I can see my objects on that glazing layer. There's A-plan hidden, okay, nothing on that. Level, nothing on that. Wall, you can see the walls that are associated with this. And every time you make a wall, you always want to make sure that it's closed off like this, okay? Even though the glazing is on top of it, okay, we'll see why when we start to print. And just one final thing to note is the one thing that I cannot stress enough is how important it is to have a very, very organized drawing. So please try to keep your objects organized on their correct layers. The more complex the drawing becomes, the more layers start to become more important. And you'll see this as we go throughout the semester, and it's very, very important once you enter a professional setting.